Yeah, for myself personally, it's always been all Zoom or emails. I've never really taken an actual pitch meeting per se in person.
So if I were to, let's say, be a prospective writer, a new writer, want to write for one of these sort of TV movie networks, what would be my email pitch?
Well, I think you really have to approach it first in explaining that you'd like to pitch and if they would love to have the opportunity to have a conversation with you first and ask if you can send the pitches over. If you just cold send ideas and scripts, a lot of the executives and networks aren't going to look at them, for out of liability issues, legal issues. They want to avoid anyone sending a script in, then making a movie a year later, and then claiming it was their idea. So they just won't read them. So you really need to approach it in more of a sense of, is there any way I can send you my idea? And sometimes they'll even send you a release form in advance.
Yeah, so being respectful of protocols and not just, hey, I got this great idea, and then going off sort of on a tangent about it.
Yeah, I mean, 100% act as a professional and respect any protocols they do have, and because they're there for a reason. And at the end of the day, the material will always win. So if the material is what they need and it's quality enough and it's professional, they're open to it, but there probably is a certain legal protocol they have to go through.
And then what if they say, yes, we would like you to pitch, you sign a release, you send it back, then how should the email be? How long should it be?
I would really focus on the material and just say, be grateful for the chance to discuss this. Here's the idea. Maybe put the log line in there in case they don't even open the attachment and read, or, make it easier on them. Just always make it easier on them. Let them see the idea and fall in love with it first.
And so maybe just a few paragraphs. You don't want to overwhelm them.
I would say the shorter the better, to be honest. As someone at home that is, gets a handful of emails a day, I've learned that a lot of executives get hundreds of emails a day, if not, maybe into the thousands, some of them. So I would say the shorter the better, and be respectful of their time. And I wouldn't, I would be humble. I think humble is always a good thing, and gracious.
Are you dealing with only producers, or are you also dealing with networks?
Both. I find that I've worked with producers first, and they get it to where something needs to be, and then sort of the final say or the final production notes will come from networks. And then, of course, again, you have a lot of people, several people giving different opinions, and that's when it's your job to take all of those notes and figure it out.
Right. And once you're given a note, is this just a day turnaround that you have to change
Well,
it?
usually it would be for a full draft at once. So you would probably have a good couple of weeks. And I think every situation could be different. You may have a contractually obligated for a certain time, which could be a couple weeks or 30 days. But you probably aren't as well. I think it really depends on when they're going into production, if they are.
Do most of these shoot in Canada?
I would say it's changing a little, but there's a very large percentage that shoot in Canada. But I do think that's changing a lot in the last year or two, even more in America and also international.
What have you learned about working with networks during your time as a writer?
I think, again, respecting their opinion and respecting that they've done this a lot. And it's at the end of the day, if you are a writer for hire, you are a writer for hire, and you need to kind of give them what they feel is most successful for their company. And I think it's very valuable to be able to do that. If people give an opinion and a story, and they're able to read it, yes, that's exactly what I meant with that note. If you're able to nail that, that's very valuable as a writer.
What kind of pressure and stress is there as a writer?
There is some pressure if there's some problems, and there is a bit of a time limit. Again, every script may be different as far as the timetable of when it's due or what else you have going on in your life, which is a very real thing. You need to get through these 15 pages today, but you have, there's construction, or the maintenance person showing up, or what have you, and that's a very real thing. I think that's why so many people go and just kind of go to cafes, right? I think you could feel pressure realizing that a production of dozens or 100 people or so is kind of hinging on you getting these words right and this last draft right, and getting that in for the budget. I've felt some pressure around that sometimes, but like most things in showbiz, once you do it and you're able to do it, then I think you feel less pressure the next time.
Do you look back to the times when you thought, I'd love to do this writing thing, but then you realize it is a job? I mean, it's easy to think that it's going to be fun to be creative, and then there are parameters,
Yeah, I find it very advantageous to treat it as a job, to treat it as I not just schedule wise, like let's go to work and let's write, for 8 hours today. That's my job. But yeah, I think you're always creative, because the beginning ideas and everything is still your creativity. So at a certain point, yes, a lot of other people are getting involved and giving their opinions and 2 cents, and a lot of those notes are very valuable. They're very good at what they do. So you just kind of appreciate that. It's kind of how you look at it.
What budget ranges are you writing for?
I think they do vary. Many of the thrillers well under $1 million. Some of the rom-coms nowhere over a few million or a couple million. So you really have to take that, you really have to work that into the script.
How do you know that you're writing stories that fit into those budgets?
Well, fortunately, I've sort of been trained, from past experiences of the tricks of keeping everything down. And you sort of know in advance, this is the level of the movie that we're writing here. Don't go nuts. Don't go adding, tons of locations and everything. And you'll quickly realize if you're off track with that. They'll let you know, and then it sort of almost becomes second nature, to in advance with your outline to think about, how can I make this location the same location as this? How can I get the most out of this location, for example, and use this for 16 scenes instead of 4? You really learn to avoid ever using something just once, really learn to avoid ever using a character just once, and little tricks like that you sort of pick up along the way that seem to be pointed out every time.
And sorry, did I hear you say earlier that rom-coms have more locations than thrillers? Or was I just sort of imagining that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say like technically. What I was saying with that is you might be able to get away more with a thriller for a very long sequence at the end that could be all on one location that takes up a big chunk of pages. But at the same time, at this level of what's still considered a TV movie genre, the budget is going to be at a level where you have to always be conscious of locations for rom-coms and thrillers. Yeah.
Right, because I guess with a thriller, if toward the end you could either have somebody being held captive in a room or on the phone or something, whereas it seems like with the romantic comedy, there's shopping around in a little town, going into the store. It seems like they needed a little more location.
Yeah, you could really eat away a lot of pages in those thrillers at that. But then again, if let's say in a rom-com you have a castle, a princess story or prince story, and you have a castle, well, you're just pretty much in that castle. You're not going to go too far away. You kind of use what you have, and you probably would only spend a couple production days shooting outside of the castle. So I guess it kind of varies for both genres, yeah.
If you had a friend who wanted to break into the writing side of the business, what would be your advice to them?
It would be very similar to acting, which is learn your craft. Number one, learn your craft. And fortunately, we have so many ways to do that with writing, whether watching movies, we have so much access to so much information nowadays, like Film Courage. But no, seriously, but to watch all these things and really make sure that you're at a professional level before telling everybody you're ready to give them a script. It goes from taking courses, classes. I've taken dozens of classes from several, online, in person, everything, and just learning your craft. It's a very learnable skill. Just like acting, you can learn it, and then a certain talent is needed as well, and certain talent flourishes. But at the same time, it's still a craft, it's still a technique.
And do you feel with writing you actually need to be in LA? I know with acting you might need to be in LA more so than others.
I mean, I don't think so nowadays, to be honest. I don't think there's really any advantage to it, more so than ever with every passing year. I mean, sure, there may be the occasional meeting or the occasional, running into someone that could work out, or networking, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's becoming less and less of a requirement, but definitely helpful. And for myself personally, I would rather be around where there's still more or less the center of show business.
Right, because I was just thinking that so many of these rom-coms or thrillers, they seem to take place in a small town.
Yeah.
So to almost get that feeling, because we're in such a bubble here in LA,
Yeah, that's true,
I think we forget what normal American life is. Even outside of other parts of California and Nevada, what we were talking about earlier, there's so many small towns that are sort of normal American life, whatever that is, in this day and age. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it too, is if you aren't in those areas and you are just in LA and you need to create any world you really have, we have so much access now to videos and everything. I've written a couple scripts of places I've never been, and there weren't too many, there weren't big complaints about it not being authentic or anything like that. At least they didn't tell me. And so it's, I think you just can kind of find that world now, I mean, I will say the biggest difference about being a writer and not being in LA is it allows you to live that other life, to see things, to write while you're on vacation on the beach, things like that. So that's something you definitely can't do as an actor. You need to be physically present. When they get that email and they get that draft, they don't really know or really seem to care, where you are.
Right, because we're surrounded by so many industry people that,
Right.
again, we were talking about the Greyhound earlier.
Right.
Take a trip on the Greyhound back in the day, and you'd be exposed to so many fascinating characters. With the writing pitches, is this all Zoom or is this in person?
Yeah, for myself personally, it's always been all Zoom or emails. I've never really taken an actual pitch meeting per se in person. I have, before COVID, I had a couple small coffee meetings, with producers that were set up, but not actual pitch meetings. Yeah, it's everything Zoom.
Okay, and so even when they like the idea and then you give them sort of a synopsis, at no point are you really coming in and shaking hands? It's all done virtually?
Yeah, sign of the times. Everything is just either email or sometimes a Zoom call, yeah. Or a lot of phone calls, just regular phone calls, yeah.
Are there producers that you've worked with that have hired you that you've never met in person?
Yeah, I've probably only met a couple in person. I can't recall last time meeting anyone in person that we eventually ended up, getting a project made.